Hello, everyone. My name is Shrita Vizel. I am a Jewish YouTuber based in Brooklyn. I come from the Satmar Hasidic community. My first language is Yiddish. And something I love to do is unpack various artifacts from the Hasidic community that are amazing sociological examples that you wouldn't be able to access without a translator and someone to explain it for you. Today, I want to share with you a 20-minute speech, a fascinating speech given by the Grand Rabbi of the Satmar sect, Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum, in which he rails about the dangers of the times, which are to him artificial intelligence. This speech was something that I found so interesting that I listened to it several times and I decided to try to just play it for you and translate as we go along and explain some things. So, two things I want to say before I get started. This is the timestamp of when the actual recording begins. If you want to go straight ahead to the recording, just jump on towards that timestamp. But first, I want to say two things as a way of contextualizing this recording to me. First of all, I grew up in Curious Joel, and Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum was my Ruv my entire life, as far as I knew. So when I was a kid, the Grand Rabbi of the Satmar sect was the father of Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum, the Baruch Moshe. The Baruch Moshe, or Moses Teitelbaum, lived in Williamsburg, and so satellite communities get their local rabbi, which is usually a family member of the dynastic family. So the son of the grand rabbi, Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum, was our rabbi, was our Ruv. That was the name. It was the local rabbi. Despite the fact that I passed his house all the time, and his wife, the Rebbitzin, would come to school and give us gifts at graduations, milestones, and I sort of would move through the realm with the royal leadership family. I only met Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum one time. Um, so when I lived in the Hasidic community, my experience of the rabbis were that they were like royalty. They were leaders who were more ceremonial than actually um, the ones who led the flock, meaning they were the ones who were at the helm of ceremonies, more like the royal family than puppeteers who pulled the strings of the community going on. It's not to say that they didn't have power and they weren't leaders, but rather my feeling were that their roles were largely ceremonious or ceremonial. At the same time, there were a lot of politics around succession and leadership that some people took a great interest in, especially men, and that was something I had no interest in whatsoever. So there were some people who were talking and heated and extremely into the roles of rabbis, and they would go to see the rabbis and go for blessings, and the rabbis were a big deal. There were a lot of people who were like, meh, what we call a kalt husid, a cold hasid, which actually feels like an oxymoron because by definition a hasid is a follower, but it's like someone who's not very engaged and excited about the leadership. And this is very common for women because the rabbis are in male spaces, the women don't really have access. And so we were just living our lives. We were doing our thing. We were walking the street, going to weddings and talking about teachers and our dresses. We weren't really interested in the rabbis. The one time I got to see the rabbi was actually when I was, I think, 22 or 23, when my son had his upshin. So an upshin is a 3-year-old's birthday and first haircut. So by the time my son turned 3, I was still in the community and my son was in the school system. But by then, my life was unraveling. Basically, I had written a blog that caused me to change and caused me to want to change my family, and it became very, very tense, and family members were involved. my relatives were not happy with me. And so there was a lot of friction that was going on at the time. And at the same time, my son was my baby. I was super excited about his third birthday. I was hosting it in my house. I made all sorts of things. I wanted it to be perfect, and I taught him the lullaby. So it was a very bittersweet, intensely conflicting moment, and I really wanted to cherish it with my baby, with my son, and I wanted it to be special. But somehow it was decided that we would go to the grand rabbi, the whole family, my parents and my in-laws and my various relatives. We'd go to the grand rabbi for the rabbi to make the first cut of the hair, and then we would go back home to finish my son's haircut, curl the side curls, put on a yarmulke and the tzitzis, and do the party. um I had never been to the rabbi's house, inside the rabbi's house, although I had gone outside past it many times. So I remember going in with my mother and my mother-in-law to the women's waiting room. There was like a doctor's office style waiting room. We sat there until we were called into a huge room with a really long dining room table, and the rabbi was at the very end of the table, sitting at the head of it. And my son went over to him. The rabbi gave him a lollipop, did a little snip, wished everyone mazel tov, and I was very anxious. I was very nervous. There was a lot of tension in the air, and I just wanted to go home. And instead, just as we were done, the rabbi said, Mazel tov to everyone. May you see a lot of nachas, and so on and so forth. May this be joyous and turning point for your child as he grows up. He said, I would like for the mother to stay. I was like, me? Yeah, the rabbi wants to talk to you. Um, so everyone left, and that was a little embarrassing. Um, my mother, my mother-in-law, everyone left. It was just me, and the rabbi said, here. Basically, he said he hears there are problems. He wants me to go home and be happy. For me, that was my one experience I had with him. And I was quite hurt. It was, first of all, humiliating for me. And also, um, it was, it was very, it felt a little bit like taking away from a very special moment for me. It's interesting for me to look at his artifacts today, at his speeches and his leadership, because I see a different side. Um, I see what seems to be a complicated man, not just someone who is at the head of ceremonies holding a silver walking stick and reciting speeches that are pre rehearsed, but someone who is actively playing a role in shaping the community. During COVID, especially, he made some calls and said some things that were not in line with what the wisdom of the government was, and with what everyone in the community, mostly that the community Hatzalah EMS leadership were saying. And I realized that to some degree, he is a man who has his own leadership. And that's been really interesting to see. And this is a good example of that. So that's one piece to this artifact that I find interesting. The other is the community's role with technology. It's been really interesting to see the Hasidic community deal with technology intuitively very differently. A new technology comes in for us, we download it, we integrate it, we become adept at using it in our lives. We don't even think about it. While in the Hasidic community, it sets off a natural, completely different trajectory of things. And I've always been really interested in that because I've tried to be a very mindful user of technology, to at least be very aware of how technology shapes me as it changes very, very quickly. And that to me feels like a very interesting and important thing to keep an eye on. How the Hasidic community deals with technology provides us with a different example than the one we take for granted as the default inevitable way. Well, it's not inevitable, there is a different option. And so that can give us a lot of food for thought. In my own life, I have gone through so much changes in technology. When I started, my journey started my leaving the Hasidic community started when I was 21 and I had internet, and that opened the world to me and led to all of these frictions that caused me to need to leave. Um, when I started my channel, my son and I both had flip phones, basic phones, and I lived a fairly Luddite life. By now, my life is so integrated with technology that there is literally a person that I know that I only doesn't speak English, and I only speak to them through technology. Machine translation. It's just so amazing what technology makes possible, but also how everything I say is now recorded. Every aspect of my life is being recorded and is being handled by machines, is being packaged and reframed by machines. It's just amazing. The medium is driving my life and is shaping me, and it's just so much. And pausing and saying, how can things be done differently? How is my mother doing it? My sister's doing it is really interesting and for me very, very valuable. And so this particular speech, which is about the threat of AI in this community, is a very good example of a different approach, and I am going to play it. This recording I got from a hotline, which is a phone number I called. It was recorded there. This is very common. A lot of Hasidim don't have access to radio and they don't have access to recordings on the cloud. And so they will call phone numbers, and that's where a lot of their content is stored, on hotlines, phone lines. And that's where I picked up this particular recording. So it's audio only. If I ever get the video, I'll obviously share that. But for now, I'll just play the audio, translate as we go along, and explain things.
Nummer rieft man TechSpot 845-60.
So this is as soon as I called, I was given an ad. This is what funds these hotlines, and it's TechSpot. And it's the phone number you can call for whatever the service is. Now here it begins. It says, "Zihin de flamfeidige Kodesh von Rabbeinu Shlita," which is to hear the flaming, the impassioned speech of the Grand Rabbi against the new Satan of today's generation, which is a refrain. Every generation has their own temptations, evil temptations, their own pitfalls, and this speech is against today's pitfall.
Van Insen in de Deures, am Naimischl von der AI-Telefonnummern bricht jetzt.
The new temptation of the AI telephone numbers. Press
422 from the main menu.
422 from the main menu.
Panupta, das Kodesh über AI
I'm pressing stuff.
2028 pound. Spire Kodesh.
Okay.
Lieber das Kodesh mal Ave, sei Donnerstag nur set auf ein paar Wurf.
Now they say someone is introducing it by saying these are the holy words, and the date when it was given, the speech.
The mixture from AI.
Okay, now it begins the speech. So this is basically a sheet. This is a study session in the synagogue for men, I believe for unmarried boys, bukhrim, that the rabbi gives on a weekly basis. And he starts with a piece of the study segment that they're going to study. And because I'm a woman and I wouldn't attend these things, I'm not so familiar with the verses he begins with, but he uses it as a leading path to get to the crux of the real issue he's going to get to. It's interesting. There seems to be almost like an audio watermark where they're murmuring into the recording that this is in memory of someone. So this must be the sponsorship. But the basic thing that it opens to, I'm not going to translate everything he says, but he's citing a verse and he is translating it. And he says what verse it is. And he says it'll be like this.
Zu de Gmule, Yisroi Shaludam, Yasahole von a Mensch, Misgabel Ule Bechol Yoim, stark sich auf Mensch jeden Tag.
So he says the Talmud says that the evil temptation of a person strengthens over him every day. I think it kind of is like a way of saying it renews its power, its hold every day.
Ile Mule HaKadosh Baruch Hu Azroi. Wenn ich was reibisch der helft der Mensch, soll beikommen dem Yisr Hara, lo Yicheloi, was reibt der eigene Keuches, nicht gekannt, beikommen, im Basiegen dem Yisr Hara.
So again, he is citing verse and translating from Hebrew, or I think it's Hebrew, to Yiddish. He's saying if God wouldn't help man to overcome his evil inclinations and desires, then a person wouldn't be able to overcome. And he's using the term Yetzer Hara. I'm not exactly sure how to translate it. I've gotten flack on my channel before for how I translated it. To us, the Yetzer Hara was always the evil inclination, basically. But we always use the term as a very embodied inclination. It was that physical character that sits on your shoulder and tells you to do bad things. That's how we envisioned it.
I du a Gerse in der Gemure, Shus Yisroi Shaludam, Misgabel Ulav,
So he says there's a version in the Gemara, and again he's citing. So again, this is a way of talking. This is a style of speech where you're weaving verses together to make a larger point.
in der Gerse in der Gemure, Yisroi Shaludam, Mischadish Ulav, Banait sich Bechol Yoim. Ins gefimme sich,
So he brings now a new verse. Now again, I'm not versed in how learning thinking works, so I'm not the expert on translating this particular thing, but basically he is bringing a different verse. You can often use the same verse with different interpretations, but in a different verse he's saying that the evil inclination is renewed every day.
in a Tat, der Koyach von Technologie, ist Mischadish Bechol Yoim.
So he says the power of technology renews itself every day, meaning that is the Satan that every day reinvents itself. It's almost like it mutates and reappears in a new guise, so that you always have to be on edge and careful because it's never the same face.
Banait sich jeden
It
Tag.
renews itself every day.
Ständig ist du nahe Keilem verbessert von Vernechten. Alles kommt es aus mit der Chiddisch, mit der Nahekeit.
There's always new things coming out.
In durch die Keilem,
And through
ist
these
der Koyach von
devices,
Yisr Hara,
the power of the
It's
evil
harder.
inclination
mit
renews
der
itself
Banayen, bekoyach Hudisch,
with a
mit
new
der
power,
Nahen Koyach.
with a new power.
Jeden Tag, täglich.
Every day, daily, it renews
Ist du ein
itself.
Gebrauch,
There's a need
unzuvielen am Melchume
to
gegen Yisr
wage
Hara,
the battle
alle
against the evil
Keuches,
inclination with all your powers
aufgelassen,
in order to
Klan
save
Yisroel,
the Jewish
die
people,
befragt, die jinge Kinder von
and especially the young
Klan
children,
Yisroel, meint man
young
den
Jewish
Sinn
children,
in der Techte,
which means both sons and daughters,
jüdische Kinder,
Jewish
sie sollen
children.
nicht umkommen,
They
ich
shouldn't
Tachtes in Gehennem.
end up in hell, in the pit
In der
of the pits.
Vergangenheit
In the past,
ist auch gewesen ein Yisr Hara.
there were also
Asaf
evil
in Yisr Hara.
inclinations.
Was soll die Yisr Hara von Computers?
Let's take the evil
Sie gewesen
inclination
ein
of
schwerer
computers.
Kampf
It was a
a
difficult
größer
battle.
Kampf
It was a big battle
gegen dem Yisr Hara.
against this evil inclination.
So hat gewesen ein Eizer.
So there was a solution.
Nicht heranzubringen, a Computer in Stieb.
Not to bring a computer into the
Ja,
house.
viele, die Geschäften,
And even
die
those who
bedarf
need it
nur
for
ein Computer
business,
in Geschäft,
and they need a computer
die
in the
auch gewesen
business,
ein Eizer,
there was also a
man
solution
kann darauflegen ein Filter,
that you could put a filter
sie sobern dem Computer.
to clean the computer.
In durch dem,
And through this,
tausende Jiden
thousands of Jews
opgehalten von heranbringen nach Computer in Stieb.
that
Oder
thousands of
aufgelegt auf
Jews
auf Filter in Geschäft.
either stop themselves from bringing a computer into their homes or they put a filter if they use it at work in their shop or so on.
Denn er sagt, Jiden, ich kann sagen, schwere tausende Jiden,
And so it's possible to say that a good thousands of Jews
aufgelastet geworden.
were saved
Für mich heißt heute,
from the evil inclination
ausgekommen in Scholtachtes.
of getting to
Auch
Sholtachtis,
ist
which is
gewesen,
becoming rotten.
heute,
There was another evil inclination of technology
wenn der Keilem lief das Video,
with,
Smartphone,
that it's called video smartphone.
ist auch gewesen, ein Ausweg, ein Einzel.
There was also a
Bei
way
jedem
out,
hier
a solution
Reichsgemeinde,
for everyone
bei
God-fearing
jedem
person,
ehrlichen Jid,
for every pious
nicht
Jew,
heranzubringen, der Keilem in sein Haus.
not to bring this device into
Doch
their
dem, was
house
man das nicht herangebracht in Haus,
by not bringing it into the
aufgelastet
house.
geworden,
They were saved.
und er sagt, tausende Jiden,
Thousands of Jews were
jeder
saved,
Hashem,
God-fearing
Ist die
Jews.
Leute im Heiligen Beschäfer,
And thank
Heilige
God.
Hase, ehrlich ungehietene Stiefel.
And so there were, thank God, holy, pious, protected homes. What I find really interesting about this is his narrative about technology, which is very self-aware, and I have to say, similar to my own video about the Hasidic community and technology, which is a story of a community confronting step by step new threats to its cultural makeup from a technology that threatens to completely remake it, and then wages a battle and comes up with an inventive solution that is often surprising, is quite ingenious, and allows for the juggling of innovation, of adaptation, while also limiting the adaptation. So it's never yes technology, no technology. We're not staying in buggies without technology. We're saying, how can we embrace it without embracing it in a way that we consider corrupting to the soul? And that's the key of where I am so impressed with the Hasidic community, that it's not all or nothing. It's always a dance, a complicated dance without a clear resolution from the beginning, but one that that is designed to lead the community to come up with the kinds of solutions he talks about, like computers. When I was a kid, we had a computer in our house. It did nothing. You could just play Snake on it. But then when computers became more smart, there was that dance that he speaks of. And the computer we had in our house disappeared, right? It went away. And so all of these, the history of Hasidic Jews and technology, he tells, I think, very accurately and self-aware. And I found that really interesting. And I think it's better than my video.
Aber jetzt,
But yes,
in
but
der
now
Weizung,
is
wie
the pain
jeden ehrlichen Jid,
of every
ist
pious
so ein
Jew.
neue Jeister heute,
There is a new evil inclination,
Tag Ärger von der Frieden, was man mit dem Mann.
much worse than the
Der
previous
Jeister heute
ones.
wird ungeriefen,
This evil inclination
AI.
is called AI.
mit jedem Telefon in Stieb,
With every phone in
oder
the
ein
house
Telefon,
or a cell
a
phone,
vieles kuschere Telefon,
even a kosher phone,
kann man sich umbinden,
you can connect
in Unschöpfen, zu dem Jeister heute.
and get attached
In
to
der
this evil
Jeister heute,
inclination.
als ein gewaltigen Keuch am
And this
Äußeren,
evil
a
inclination is a
gewaltige
terrible pull.
Ziehungskraft,
It's very
sei es
addicting.
stark, in seilmächtig.
It's very strong and very powerful.
Berät von dem Indien, ich du zwei in Minen.
When we talk about this, there are two
With the AI.
categories of AI.
Nur
There are two
ein
issues. There's one kind
muss es eine Geier
that relates to
Geschäften,
business,
verbale Mischer.
for people who are in business.
Das darf auch gezogen, a gewaltige Schmiede,
This also
der
needs to have
Ungehittenkeit.
a great amount of protection and care. But I don't want to talk
No,
about
for the
that
zweiten
now.
means.
Only from the second kind.
Oili im Eimer,
Oili im
Oili
oimer,
im Loi
oili im lo oimer. This is an expression.
sei
A
weit,
woe for us, woe to us if we talk about it, woe to us if we don't talk about it. In other words, he is saying this is something that is very sensitive to talk about. Basically, he's spelling out a problem that by spelling it out, he's creating intrigue among those who don't know about the problem. Like when I've been talking about this video recording on my Instagram, people have said, I know of Hasidim who had no idea about AI and found out about AI through this speech. So he is cognizant of the fact that talking about this is making people aware. People are like, ooh, what is this thing? Let me go check it out. But at the same time, if he doesn't talk about it, that's a problem as well. So he's expressing a dilemma. Oily, woe is us if we talk about it, and woe is us if we don't talk about it.
Sie können schon nicht behaupten,
We can't anymore
das
hide
in ihr.
the subject.
Alle junge Kinder,
All the young
sei
children,
sie,
be
sei
they
die
son
Töchter,
or daughters,
weißen von dem,
know of
und
this,
alles ist offen für sie.
and everything's open to them.
In sie Weisung,
And to our
mit
pain,
jedem Telefon, was sie noch vorhanden,
with every phone that
können
there
sich
is,
verbinden,
you
in
can
sie reden,
connect and talk
mit einer Spur,
with an
alle
explanation,
meine Nivelpay,
all kinds of inappropriate
jede
sexual
Sache,
and
was man tun nicht
inappropriate
tun,
stuff. Everything that
tun
you're not
nicht
allowed to
reden,
do and you're not allowed to say
in
is
Ausgerät,
discussed
in Masber,
and
auf
explained and
offenen Weg,
unpacked in a very
ohne
open
Hashem
way
zurückhält,
without
und ohne Hashem
any
Bücher,
without
Hashem
any
Yirachem.
embarrassment, God forbid.
Das ist Moishech, ist Zieht,
This
leitet das
this
Herz. Sie
pulls
reißt
sadly
auf
the
dem
heart.
Jeister Hölle,
It excites the
mit
desire.
jungen Menschen, Zoin
Young
Kudishem,
people, young
auf eine neue
innocent sheep,
Digneusen.
in a terrible
Sie
way.
zurück,
So I have to say, in the Hasidic community, there's a very big, very important milestone line between marriage and and pre-marriage. Those who are not yet married are considered Tzoyin Kudashim, really the young, the vulnerable, the ones who are potentially so much more easily corrupted. And marriage is that moment when you become mature enough to be able to be considered able to handle work, going out in the world, married life, independence. And so there is a lot more freedom and leeway for married people. Married people are the ones that generally work. And so when he talked about two kinds, he was talking really about, as I see it, the married people who are out working and have AI. He's not worried about them. That's not the topic. He's really concerned mostly about unmarried people, meidlich and jinglich, boys and girls, which here is used for unmarried, unwed males and females, or very young, newly married men, is what he mentions.
sei weg, sie zurück, sei rup,
It,
die
it
Zoin
leads them off the
Tachtes,
path into
in
the
Gehenna
pit,
Maran,
into
Rachmuna
hell,
Litzlon.
God forbid. It like takes them off the
Sei
right
Tag,
way. Many
Kushes,
souls
wenn du Kalbunas,
are the victims.
sei Tag Kalbunas, ist an du in
Many
dem.
many victims. There are many
Weil mit
victims in
auf,
this.
mit jedem Telefon, oder das Telefon, was sie tun daheim,
It could be with every
können sie
landline or cell phone
verbinden
at
mit der
home.
Klippe,
You can
in
connect
einer Wege,
with that evil
nicht.
stuff in 1
Wir können
second.
sie verbinden. Nur
Not you
leise,
can
leise.
connect,
Wir
but sadly,
verbinden sich.
sadly, you
Wir verbinden
connect.
sich befeuern.
You actually connect. People are actually
Du
connecting.
ähnliche Eltern,
They're pious
Jira
parents,
Yashem,
God-fearing parents,
oben nicht und können nicht gucken,
don't
kein
have and
Himmel
can't
Duche
have
auf dem.
any
Weil mit jedem
oversight over
guten
this.
Telefon,
Because even a
wird
kosher
es mir
phone,
nicht.
filtered phone, you
Die
can use
Masse
AI.
ist
The
neu
situation
im
is terrible,
gefährlich und
terrible,
gefährlich.
absolutely terrible.
Mit ein bisschen Herz,
and with a heavy heart,
Schrei Hosen.
I scream
Ein
out
bitterliches Schrei.
a terrible, a
Gewalt.
heartfelt scream.
Gewalt.
Gewalt.
Wie man halt auf der Welt.
Where do we stand?
Leider, leider.
Sadly,
Mit was
sadly,
Harkelbunes.
there are many
Zwei Buchern.
victims, both unmarried
Jinge Buchern.
boys, young unmarried
In
boys,
größere Buchern.
and closer to
Und auch
marriage
in der
boys,
Weiberziel.
and also in the women's partition,
Meidlich.
women,
Ja, viel
girls,
hingeraten.
and even young newly married men.
Wie du weißt auch. Du
There's
verbindest
pain.
dich zu der Griffe.
You connect to this terrible
Halt man
source.
auf. Man geht
You
auf.
fall down and you go down
Mama ist in Gehenna.
to the pit. So basically, he's talking about phone numbers that you can call or text to communicate with AI. And there are new numbers generated by the day, just like you can get these spam calls from all sorts of numbers, the same way you can call all sorts of numbers for AI. One gets blocked, another one crops up. There is an infinite number of these numbers that you can call, text, like you can send a photo and say, please edit this, or you can communicate. And this is incredibly electric and exciting. I can put myself in the shoes of these Hasidic youths and see how this is a gateway to the whole world. You can talk about anything to a machine. When I was a kid, we had a hotline called Tell Me, and I remember how addictive that was, even though it just gave us a couple of options, weather, movies, horoscopes, etc. And I didn't understand much of it, and it didn't do anything that AI does. So it's really something that I can see being very, very electric and exciting to those who find this avenue of accessing the world through these kosher technologies.
Meure dich verdorben.
I want to say one more thing. Kosher phones, until recently, would block the internet, but wouldn't block any phone numbers. And even when they began to block phone numbers, there are so many phone numbers that they could be a kosher phone and you could still contact AI.
Du wirst ausgeleitet.
You get
In
emptied.
jedem Breckele, jede
you bec-
Schemaie.
You get emptied out of every little crumb of warmth and fear to God.
Jeden Chayshuk.
Every
lernen
energy,
die Heilige
excitement
Teure.
to learn the Holy Torah.
Man verliert
You lose
jede Nundschaft. Die Heilige
every
Teure.
closeness to the Holy
Sie
Torah.
bringt daran die ganze Zimmer von Amerika in
it-
der
it
Heilige
bring-
Hart daran.
It brings all of the impurities into the heart.
Oi, los Naim, Shikar Thomas. Weiß sie die Augen, wo sie hören los.
Woe to the ears that hear this.
Jede Telefon,
Every phone,
auf jeder Pusche Telefon,
even a
ist
simple phone,
geworden
even
a
a kosher phone,
Kleinmaschkes.
has become a device of
Verdarbt
temptation.
für
It
die
can
Schumme
cause the rot to the
Vielleicht.
soul of a Jew.
Wieso halt man mich gegen die
So how-
Jaiserhörer?
So how do you wage a
Nur
battle
ein
against
Heißer.
this evil
Nur die
inclination?
reden zum
There's only
Zimmer.
one solution: to talk to
Was
the
muss
public,
er
to explain,
Meure zu sagen.
to
Jüdische
raise,
Hälfte.
to
die
inspire
weinen.
people, and to cry,
Und die zu sagen.
to inform.
Hi. Vater Sechurem. Ich habe
Both-
eine Kaiwes.
Both
Bei
with the
jedem
men
einen,
and with
bei
the
jedem
women,
Frau.
for both
Der
the young
größte
and the old,
Hunger, wie mir gefällt sich.
the great danger we're in,
Mit ausgebrochenem Hals.
with a broken heart. I had to skip some of this because apparently how I recorded the audio left with a ton of sound, and at some point it wasn't even usable anymore. It picked up the ambient sound around me. But the important parts of this speech are there. One of the very interesting, revealing parts of the speech is the role of the orator in the rabbi. The rabbi is not just giving a speech, he's supposed to use koyach hadibur, which is power of speech, to move people, and he seems aware of it. It actually has a very strong effect on me as well. The crying, there's a kind of a performance of stirring you, just like someone can be a storyteller and try to get you to move you, or an actor or try to get to move you to tears. His role is to awaken in your heart by inspiring you to tears, and he says it in his own words. What is there to do except to cry and inspire? And the role of this kind of power of speech in shaping things, I think, is something I didn't really appreciate. And I can see so much more in this particular recording. I find it altogether, personally, I don't find it to be extreme. I find it to be very insightful. I find it to be logical with the community's perspectives, and it makes sense to want to limit children from being able to text with AI chatbots. I'm not sure why. When I published an excerpt of this on my second channel, people had a very extreme reaction to it. Um, to me, it's not illogical, and I find it quite congruent and in line with the challenge of this new technology, which children being able to access AI unsupervised has definitely caused problems in society at large. We've had children who had relationships with AI that has led to terrible things, and I can see why caution would be an approach that would be warranted, even though some of his language, of course, is very extreme. Also, the view that exposure to these things will permanently change you is not something I disagree with. My own life was permanently changed by exposure to the internet. I would say for the better. I would prefer to have had the information I got. But I think many people would say not necessarily for the better. I also think I've seen in my years things on the internet that I would love to unsee, that in many ways I have acquired information and seen things I can never unsee. I've changed in ways I can never unchange myself. And I think it would have been better if I hadn't. So the idea of trying not to ever see these things in the first place resonates with me, and it's logical. And I think there's a lot here that I'm quite impressed with. Um, maybe he's a notch away from the impression I had on my son's Upsharon day. This gives me maybe a more favorable impression. Um, in any event, I would love to hear your thoughts. I was thinking of exploring more of AI technologies from different, maybe more secular perspectives on my channel, as it's something that interests me. So please share your thoughts, your ideas, and I look forward to reading them. Okay, be well, everyone. Bye.